Welcome back to IAS Net Study. This is the ethics series and this is the 45th video in this ethics series. This is the last unit. We are going to take up the discussion, probity in governance. 6-7 videos would be sufficient to cover this last unit. And here in this video, we are going to talk about two concepts. The first is the basic concepts of public service or the civil services, and then we are going to take up the understanding of probity, the challenges, and link it with governance. These aspects are going to be discussed in this video. Let's get into the discussion. The first concept that is mentioned, the first topic that is mentioned in your syllabus, it is concept of public services slash civil services. See, so if the question comes regarding public services and civil services, you can use it interchangeably, but I'll tell you the difference between public services and civil services while we talking about. But any questions related to civil services or the public services, you can use it as a fodder material. So let's talk about public service. Let me give you guys the structure of public service here. So in most of the countries, this is how it works. Public servants or public service, they act as intermediary. They act as a bridging factor between one side there are political representatives and another side there are citizens, people of the country. So in between we have a public service or civil service or public servants. So they act as a connecting factor. See, political representatives, they go for policy formulation, and this policy formulation is going to be implemented by public service. Policy formulation is going to happen through the public representatives and people representatives, and that implementation is in the hands of public servants or the civil servants. Ultimately they give that connecting factor here. So they, public servants or the civil servants, public service or the civil service, if you look at it on the whole as a service, they function as a delegates of elected representatives. Here the MPs and MLAs in parliament, they're formulating a policy. Now it is your responsibility to implement. Ultimately objective of both a political representative as well as the public servants, it is welfare of the people. It is, they have to serve the public interest. That is the ultimate objective. But the way they do it, uh, political representatives by formulating the policy and public servants by implementing these policy. But ultimately what is the objective, what is the ultimate goal? It is the public interest, it is the welfare of the citizens of a country. So this is the setup of public services or the civil services. And these elected, there are two factor entities here. One is political representatives, another one is public servants. See, both of them, they are accountable to the people. Political representatives, they have the direct accountability because there is an election every 5 years and people are going to give that authority through the electoral process. So you are directly accountable to the people. They can change the mandate if they are not happy about it. So there is a direct accountability for political representatives. And even for a public servant or a civil servant, even they are also have to ensure that accountability factor to the people. Even though there is no direct accountability, but yes, there is accountability factor. There are so many uh, rules, regulations, and formats are there where that accountability can be questioned. That accountability, your accountability, I am a public servant and my account, they can question my actions here. So I am accountable to the people. So there are so many mediums, so the constitutional bodies, there are courts, there are statutory bodies, so they can ask the question. So these bodies, they work, again their objective is to fulfill the public interest, their objective is towards the welfare of the citizens. And uh, even the both the points that it is talking about that only. Thus public service becomes the operational arm of democracy, translating political will into a social outcomes. Policy formulation at the top level, implementation by public service servants. In the essence, public service serves four entities. Public servant, civil servant, they serve four entities. The first is people. So there is a direct accountability factor. I am a public servant, and whom do I work for? It is for the welfare of the people. My objective of my job, my service is welfare of the citizen. So I work for the people. I work for the government because policy formulation happens by the government, and I have to listen whatever my political leadership says. I have to listen as long as it is under the garb of legality. I have to obey, I have to listen my political leadership. And institution itself, I am a part of this public service, and whatever the rules and regulations are there, I have to obey this, I have to follow this, I have to give my service to the institution itself. And then law of the land, constitution, statutory law, all these things I have to obey that, I have to respect that. So these are the four entities I have to make sure that I obey, I satisfy all these four entities here. So this is public service. Now United Nations, it has given three general principles for the public service, and it applies for it for the international level, for all the countries it applies. There are three principles. The first principle is with respect to trust. See, public office, it's a position of trust, and here it is your responsibility, and it is your moral duty, and it is your legal duty to uphold the interest of public, to work for the welfare of the people. So it's a position of trust. See, the reason I'm telling you the position of trust is that there is a factor of permanence is there. For elected representatives, elections happens and people can change the mandate, but with respect to public service and the civil servants, it is a permanent office. There is no these kind of elections. Once you clear the exams, once you enter into the service, you will be there. So trust is very important factor. When there is a trust, people participation will be there in the governance. When there is no trust, people, there is a kind of apathy among the people, and this is very disastrous for a development of a country. So trust is very important. Public office is a position of trust. This is the first principle. That trust you have to maintain. Being a civil servant, you have to maintain that, you have to uphold this trust, and then make sure that efficiency, effectiveness, and integrity, that has to be maintained in your conduct. Usually this is what I told you, that permanent, the factor of permanency is there. See, uh, once you appointed, you are there till retirement. Now you are going to get the salary, whatever, whether you work. Even the verification process, it's not that easy. So you are going to get the salary. There is no direct accountability to the people, even though there are bodies, there are now media, everything is there, but still uh, you have that iron framework, whether it is with respect to service or your salary. All these things are the facilities they give. So here what you have to focus is the efficiency. You have to give your 100%. It is not that you should not be lethargic, or you should not be complacent that I've got everything, I will work on my own pace. This is not going to happen. You have to be efficient, because lakhs of people, millions of people are dependent on you. You are a district collector, so people are dependent on your decision, people are dependent on your implementation of policies. So efficiency is very much important, effectiveness again, and the integrity is following rules and regulation, adhering to these kind of ethical principles. All these things are very much important. So public officials, they must perform their duties competently and ethically. It is not only efficiency, there should be ethical factor also. Efficiency plus ethical, both are important. Actually, this is what probity also talks about. It has to be a combination of ethics and efficiency, ethics and effectiveness. So see, your efficiency is with respect to administrative rules and regulations, and your integrity is with respect to your ethical leadership. The combination of both should be there, and fairness and impartiality. So these are some of the foundational principles. Fairness, impartiality, justice, all these things. So public officials must be attentive, just, and unbiased, especially dealing with the citizens. These three are the core principle, three important principles of public services that has to be maintained around the uh, most of the countries. They have implemented these things. Even India also, they have implemented in the second ARC commission, first ARC commission, they have also suggested these principle, and India has, at least per se, at the theory level, these principles are considered as a core principles even in the Indian public services also. So these principles highlight that public service is not merely administrative work, but moral and enterprise rooted in trust, integrity, and fairness. It is not just efficiency, it is not just rules and regulations. Beyond that, it is not about objectivity, it is about compassion. That's the foundational values, where you talk about dedication, where you talk about empathy, where you talk about compassion. All these things comes into the picture along with efficiency, along with objectivity. So this is general principles of public services. See, whenever the question comes regarding principles of public service, or the concept of civil services, with respect to these things, the principle related to that, you can mention these UN related principles. You can talk about Nolan principle. We are going to discuss the Nolan principles also, and you can talk about the second ARC. the commissions, the fourth report talks about ethics explicitly, you can mention these things. There are some standard values, you can write these things, but you, when you give these kind of authentication in your conclusion, it gives you more marks, and it gives some kind of weightage to your answers also. It means that you know these concepts and you could able to integrate these concepts in your answer writing. The dynamic aspect of your answer writing can be enhanced too by utilizing very intelligently in your answers. Then concept of public services. What all the services are considered as a public services? So in India, uh, all India's services, civil services, the state services like IAS, IPS, even the state services like assistant commissioner, all these things comes as the under public service. These are all civil services. So public service, wide range of public service, healthcare, medical service are public service, education services are public services, police services, judicial services, all these comes under the public service. And civil service is also one among the public services. So I hope you understand the difference between public service and the civil service. From a broader perspective, it is public service. If the question comes very precisely with respect to civil services, you talk about these things, right? So this is with respect to public service in Indian context. Now let's see the distinctive features of public services, how exactly this differs from a private services. See, private services usually it mainly focuses on profit maximization. That is the main objective here. But when you think of public services, it is with respect to accessibility of the service, it is with respect to affordability of service. See, if think of private schools and the public school. Public school, they are not worried about the profit. Even the remotest corner of the country, you see the public school. Here they are not talking about the money, they are not worried about the income from the school. Here their responsibility is to provide these public services, healthcare services, to the public. Here the profit is not the motive, but here in the private sector, it is they want to earn something out of it. So that is the major difference between public service and the private service. Public service mainly focuses on service accessibility and affordability. Here, especially for the social weaker section, they should be able to get these services in an easy way. So this is public service. So in the public service, the distinctive features when you think of public service, the first one is that political direction and accountability. See, public service, take example of this medical service and the educational service. Again, here also policy formulation happens by the elected representatives, and you are going to follow the direction. I am a public servant and I am going to follow whatever my MLA MP is going to direct, or whatever the state legislature or the parliament tells me to do. So there is a political direction and I have to obey the political direction. See, even for private services, whatever the laws made by government, they also have to follow. But there is no day-to-day directions to the private schools, but in public schools you can do it. So political direction is there, and there is an accountability factor. That accountability is towards people. Public services function under political supervision and democratic scrutiny. So accountability factor, and vital for social existence. See, medical services, education, police services, these are extremely important for the survival. The concept of social contract theory, that it is responsibility of the state to give these kind of protection, these kind of services. So it is vital for social existence, or else there will be a lot of chaos. If people could not able to afford the medical services, this is going to create unhealthy atmosphere for the people. The people are not, if people could not able to get these kind of basic minimum services, the social fabric is going to be damaged. So it is extremely important, it is very much necessary for the social existence. Even like national security, law and order, public health, transport and communication, these are considered as essential services, and these are very much necessary for survival of the society and the stability of the society. And the third aspect is, third distinctive feature is that it has a large scale social impact. It has economic impact as well as a social impact. It is going to create economic infrastructure as well as the social infrastructure. So public administration, it influences social infrastructure, it influences economic infrastructure. Then public accountability, I talked about it. Accountability here, public accountability means it is not only with respect to people, even courts, even with respect to media. Even though the media don't have that statutory power, but still it is considered as a fourth pillar of the democracy. Ultimately, media represents people. So that people can channelize their anger, people can channelize their curiosity, people can channelize their questioning ability through the media. So somewhere media, it represents the people side, it gives that mirror or a window for people to express their opinion. So accountability to the people, accountability to the court, accountability to the media, and again there is a accountability, democratic accountability is there, democratic scrutiny is there. So public accountability, social welfare orientation. See, public services ultimate objective is the welfare of the people. Ultimate objective is the public interest here. So they aim at social justice, they aim at a social good actually. It's not a profit maximization. Profit maximization is with respect to private institutions or private entities, and with respect to public services it is not about the profit maximization. And rule bound function, you know that there is an accountability factor. Whatever your higher authorities, see the hierarchy, the factor of hierarchy is very much applicable to the public services. Whatever your higher authority says, that there is a mandatory aspect is there that you have to follow them. So chain of command you have to obey. So there is a chain of command. The taluk level officer, he has to listen to the district level officer, and the district level officer has to listen to the central government officer. So there is a chain of command, there is an hierarchy. This is another distinctive feature you see in a public services. And equality and consistency, and public servants are legally required to treat all citizens equally and consistently. That impartiality, non-biasness, all these things are considered as a basics. Even in the UN three general principles also, fairness and impartiality is considered as one among the points. So here also this fairness and impartiality, this will lead to the equality, this will lead to the unbiasedness, this will lead to the consistency. This is also one among the distinctive features of public services. So this is with respect to public services, both public services and the civil services. Even if the question comes regarding features of civil services, you can write the same points. So you understand the major difference. Public services, civil services is one among the public services. So that is the thing you need to keep in your mind. Rest of the points you can interchangeably use for both the concepts. Next topic, it is probity. The basic understanding, and then the challenges, and then we'll see the connecting factor between probity and governance. See what exactly this probity is. I'll tell you in a very simple word. Probity is that I have all the knowledge about all these ethical principles, and I have this knowledge. One thing, I have that ethical knowledge, and I am going to implement this ethical knowledge in my personal life, in my professional conduct. So having all these ethical information, ethical knowledge, and I make sure that I implement these ethical knowledge, ethical principles, moral principles, ethical considerations in my professional life, in my personal life. This is, in a simple way, this is how, this is what the probity is. See, we have honesty. Extended version of honesty is integrity, and extended version of integrity is probity. Here, integrity, whatever the rules are there, I am going to follow that. In my personal capacity, I am going to follow all these things. Honesty is that being sincere, being truthful. And integrity is that I am honest even when nobody is watching. There are established rules. I am going to follow those rules no matter what. And probity is that at personal level, I am committed to all these rules and regulation. At the same time, me being a civil servant, I make sure I am a officer I'm a district commissioner, and I make sure that everything is transparent. One thing, I am not going to be corrupt. At the same time, if I have the quality of, if I have the integrity, I am not going to be corrupt. But if I am have the factor of probity, I make sure that my office is transparent, my office is following all ethical and legal mandates. I make sure that nobody is misusing the government authority. So probity is extended and version of integrity, I can say that. So probity refers to the quality of strong moral principles, integrity and honesty, uprightness in both personal and professional life. I have all the knowledge, and both my personal life I am implementing it, both in my professional life also I am implementing it. And it implies not only absence of corruption or dishonesty, but presence of ethical excellence in thought, intention, and the action. So it is not my personal commitment. So even in my personal life I am following it, even in my professional life I am following. I especially we have to talk it from a governance perspective. So Me being a civil servant, me being a public servant, I make sure that even people around me also, I should make sure that my conduct in my office, I make sure these foundational principles I follow in my conduct. So that is probity. So it represents maximalist ethical approach, so where individuals and institutions strive to adhere to highest moral ideas rather than merely complying with minimum legal procedure required. See, integrity is minimum legal procedure. Integrity says that you have to be non-corrupt. Yes, I am going to be non-corrupt. I am not going to take money. I am done. I have that factor of integrity. But when it comes to probity, you make sure that people around you in your office, they are also upholding all these ethical considerations. So if you see that something is wrong, you're going to raise the voice. This is the maximalist ethical approach here. So whatever my integrity is there in my personal conduct, it is visible. Probity is that my personal integrity, I make sure that it is visible in my professional conduct. So that is probity. And if you look at the philosophical backing, where exactly these concept, all these concept of probity, where exactly this derived from? The first is through the virtue ethicist. Initially, if you look at the virtue ethicist, Socrates, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, they all talk about your decisions should be based on certain virtues. These virtues, if your decisions are based on virtues, it means that outcome will be positive. It means that everything is going to be considered ethical. So first step, when you the first step is ethical, the next eventually everything will be ethical. So this is what the virtue ethics in a simple terminology, in a simple version I am explaining you. So your character matters more than rules, all these things, because if, see, if I have this value of probity, then I am not going to misuse any of the government rules. See, if I don't have these ethical virtues, if I decisions are not based on these virtues, then whatever the laws, there are a number of laws, I still can find a loophole. I still can misuse this law. But if I am ethical, if I have this quality of probity, then I am not going to misuse it. So here, virtue ethicists, they talks about all these virtues. If your actions are based on these virtues, then it is considered ethical. Where your virtues, your actions deriving from virtues, it is nothing but this probity. You have that knowledge and you are implementing that in your conduct. And Kantian ethics talks about deontology. It means that there is a duty and there is a obligation. So if your actions based on this moral duty, legal obligation, again, you're not worried about the outcome. The way you doing the thing, the means, if you are focusing on the means, if you want your means to be ethical, again, it is talking about probity. It means that there is an ethical consideration. Whatever you do, there is an ethical consideration. Ethical consideration is nothing but probity. And even Gandhian ethics also, Gandhian ethics, it talks about, Kantian ethics tells that the means is important, and the teleological ethics, it talks about ends is important. Gandhian ethics, it talks about combination of both are important. So virtue ethicists, they talk about probity. Kantian ethics, deontological ethics, it focus on probity. And even Gandhian ethics also focus on probity. Here also, means and ends both are considered. Integrity of means is as important as the ends. And here also, if you're focusing on both the things, it means that you need to have that moral knowledge, and having that moral knowledge and implementing in your life is nothing but probity. So these are philosophical support, or from where we are drawing this concept of probity: virtue ethics, Kantian ethics, and the Gandhian ethics. And probity, this is considered as a backbone of good governance. So topic is probity and governance. Now we are connecting probity with governance. You understand what exactly the probity is. It is highest moral consideration. Now we are connecting to the public service. We are connecting to the governance. So how exactly we could able to relate? We are seeing the philosophical backing, the thinkers, moral theories, they talked about probity. Virtue ethics, they talked about probity. Kantian ethics, deontological ethics, they talked about probity. Even Gandhi, contemporary, after 1950s, even the contemporary philosophers, they also talked about probity. So it's not only restricted to these three, even others also they talked about it, because to make it easy or to give some kind of philosophical backing, we've taken only three or four here. But if you derive it, even if you look at the medieval philosophers also, they also talk about some of the virtues. They also talk about faith, hope, all these things. If you dissect these things, ultimately you're going to get the probity there also. So ultimately, what we are trying to tell is that these thinkers, moral thinkers, they also talked about probability. It is not something alien concept, it is not something new concept, it is there from the beginning. And even one of probability is one among the foundational values. Even second ARC also talk about probability, but there we have not discussed it. Probability, accountability, transparency, we did not discuss it. I told you that we are going to take up in the 6th and the 7th unit, last two units, ethics in public administration and probability in governance. I told you that where there is a separate topics are there, that is the reason we did not discuss initially, but it was mentioned even in the uh, administrative reform commissions of India also. So this is probity, the basic understanding and philosophical historical backing to the probity. Now let's connect to the governance. It's a public life. So probity in governance, it refers to the ethical standards public servant has to make. If I am a public servant, I have to maintain a certain standard. One thing, in my, as a person, I have to have certain ethical standards, and as a professional, as an individual person, I have certain ethics. As a professional civil servant, I have certain ethics. Me as a Deepak, as a person, I am truthful, I am honest. There are certain moral principles I follow in my life. And as a civil servant, I am an IAS officer, and me being an IAS officer, I have to follow certain standard. I have to be compassionate, I have to be efficient, I have to showcase the quality of excellence. There should be dedication towards the public service. These are some of the ethical values I need. So probity in public service, that these both things are important. If there is only in the professional conduct, if I don't showcase in my personal character, somewhere the congruence is we are not going to see. It is not the ethical maximalist approach. So in order to have an ethical maximalist approach, I have to showcase these values, ethical values, both in my personal life as well as the professional life. I'm holding a public office, I have to showcase here also. See why this is important, what is the necessary question is why probity is important. One thing, I am a public servant, I have the control of all these public resources, and I make sure that resources are used efficiently and effectively without any waste or without any shortage. So, in order to have that effective utilization, now I have to, one thing, I have to have that intention, I have to have that capability. How do you get that intention and capability? The combination, the ethics, efficiency and ethics. How do you get it? Through the probity. If I have that probity, I can ensure ethical leadership, I can ensure efficiency and effectiveness. And exercise coercive authority, I have that power also in my hand. Me being a civil servant, I have the certain power. So even in order to exercise my power, my authority in a legal way, I have to have this factor of probity. And whatever the decisions I take, it impacts the millions of people. So if my decisions are based on these ethical considerations, so it is not going to be wrong. So this is what virtue ethics also talks about. So whatever the decisions I take, that has to be based on moral consideration, that has to be based on legal consideration. That is nothing but that is going to ensure the probity. So these are the reasons we need probity in public life. And absence, if there is no probity, what happens? So, it is going to lead to the corruption, there will be nepotism, there will be misuse of power, cronyism, there will be erosion of public trust. When these happens, people are not going to participate in administration. People, there will, the governance it is not going to be pro people. So governance is going to be weak, there will be trust deficit at the level, at the social level. So this is what happens. So in order to safeguard the public interest, in order to safeguard the institution credibility, in order to safeguard the democratic legitimacy and social justice, probity is mandatory. Since probity is beyond all these foundational values we talked about, integrity, compassion, all these things, so probity is extremely important for the upliftment of public interest. Now, what are the difficulties? We understood why is it needed. Now I want to showcase all these abilities in my conduct, but there are real problems, there are challenges. And what are the difficulties? Let's see the difficulties. At the social level, there is a high level of inequality in the country. That inequality, it may be social inequality, it is political inequality, it is economic inequality, it is education inequality. These inequalities is also one among the reason. What happens when there are inequalities, it leads to the exploitation. And this exploitation again, uh, this creates some kind of negative environment, and this poses challenge for the practicing of probity. There are one set of people who are exploiting other, they are never going to accept all these kind of uh, uh, equal status with other people. Since the exploitation, they are enjoying this exploitation, so these kind of high inequalities, whether it is social inequality, political inequality, education, economical, this also create difficulty with probity. And at the institutional level, at the public service office level, institutional level, there is a poor work culture. Here what happens in most of the countries, the unethical behavior has become some normalized agenda. See, most of it, uh, it has become an accepted norm. People know that highest officer there will be corruption in public offices, they know that, but still it has been accepted. People know that it has become a easy now. Politicians go and accept. You might have seen a lot these kind of things in television, that people take the mic, the reporters take the mic to the people, and they say that whoever I vote, it is not going to change my life, both are corrupt, or they are going to make money, they are going to enjoy the power, and what is the advantage to me, how is it going to help me? This kind of attitude, you must have seen it. This is because there is a normalization of unethical behavior. People have accepted it, it has become some kind of normalized tendency at the social level. This is another reason. This will lead to this normalization of ethical unethical behavior, lead to the poor work culture, and this poor work culture is one among the reasons for the practicing of the probate. Usually what happens, if there is a uh, unethical behavior has been accepted, even if I show ethical behaviors, I am going to be condemned, I am going to be punished. So system should be in a way that if I am showcasing all these ethical values, I have to be rewarded. But in turn, what is happening in our country is, if I am honest, if I am upfront, if I am upright, then I am going to be punished, I will be transferred to some useless departments. See, this is what happens. There is a lack of incentives for integrity. See, there was a Ashok Kemka, he has been I don't know, the more than 50 times he has been transferred during the tenure. So it clearly shows that being honest and being upright, it is in turn these kind of personalities, they have to be rewarded, their honesty has to be rewarded. But in our country it is the opposite. So one thing, they are unrewarded, on top of it they are disincentivized being honest officers. So these are the problem, these are the difficulties, real life difficulties are there to practice probity. And weak accountability mechanisms. Even I told you that there is a permanence factor is there, there is an iron framework is there. Once you appointed, you're going to get the salary. Your salary is not based on your performance, it is not based on how many files you clear. No, it is not that. So you're going to get your salary, you are going to have your authority and power. So weak accountability mechanisms are there. Absence of ethical leadership. See, if you look at the public services, after independence, you there are thousands of civil servants or public servants still now. And if I tell you to list the names, how many honest officers you know, even if you search it internet also, maximum you can come up with 20-25 officers out of the thousands of officers. So even there is no role model, even or very less number of role models. And even if you look at these role models also, very tragic events are also, we have also seen it. Satyendra Dubey, he has been killed. See, these kind of tragic events are also there. Somewhere we are not creating this ethical leadership. So that is also another reasons for practicing probity in public life. And materialism and consumerism, even at the social level, these materialistic tendencies, consumerism, this attitude, they've entered the social level. It is impacting the probity in public life also. And low transparency, high discretionary powers, these are also problems actually. And weak value system, again you can connect it with a absence of ethical leadership, weak value system, uh, ethical dilemmas, conflict of interest, moral relativism. Because of these problems also, these are creating some difficulty to practice the probity. So these are some of the problems in practicing probity in the public life. Me being a public servant, civil servants, this is what I am facing as a public servant. These are the problems, right? Now how do you overcome this? There are two level, from two perspective we have to address it. From the individual perspective, there are certain measures I have to implement. We have to make sure that individual, as a person, personal level, as a personal level, some measures are required. From the professional perspective, some measures are required. At the personal level, see, it has to start from the educational level, very basic. From the beginning it has to be started, like value based education from the early stages. From the education, value based education, these things, it is going to mold you, it is going to change your value system. So from the beginning, education, family, teachers, they play very important role. So value based education system focus on ethical literacy and moral reasoning, and developing altruism is that you want to help without any expectation from them, the genuine intention to help others. These kind of altruism, compassion, empathy, these things, tolerance, dedication, all these things should be inculcated. These positive attributes have to be inculcated at the social level, and as well as the individual level, also at the personality level also. And emotional intelligence, so you are aware of your emotions, you are aware of other emotions also, you know what other person is going through. So these kind of features has to be inculcated at the personal level. And optimizing and service oriented attitude, you can say that dedication only. So these are some of the measures which are needed from an individual perspective. So ethical measures which are needed from an individual perspective to promote probity. So at from a personal level, from a professional level, what are the measures you need? From the social level or institutional level, what are the measures you need? So institutional and governance measures, what are them? Transformation and ethical leadership. In the last slide also I explained it. Ethical leadership, the role models, these are very much important, that is needed. And code of ethics, code of conduct, and make sure that whoever working in the institution, whoever working in that public organization, they uphold these code of ethics and code of conduct. Incentives should be there for upholding these values. At the same time, proper punishments or some kind of accountability factor should be there if you don't follow these code of ethics and code of conduct. And strong parliamentary oversight, very generalist point. Strong parliamentary oversight, independent judiciary and law enforcement, free and responsible media, active and informed society, decentralization and citizen partnership, transparency, digitization and open data. These are institutional measures or the governance measures. So initially we saw why do we need probity. Then we saw if there is no probity, we saw that all these public justice, public trust, social justice, all these things are going to be impacted. Then we saw what are the challenges, what are the difficulties. Then we saw what are the measures, and this personal level and the professional level. So this is with respect to probity. Now here we are going to connect probity to good governance. Ultimately, see, in the last topic it is probity in public life. Why do we need probity in public life? For the good governance. Or see, you governance is that how do you exercise power. So when you follow rules and regulation, it becomes good governance. Now you want to change this good governance to ethical governance. Not to change this ethical governance, you need probity. So this is what probity in public life. Now connect this, sorry, concept of probity and good governance. I told you that governance, how do you exercise power? Then becomes good governance. Good governance is that whatever the rules and regulations are have been made, rule of law, all these things, transparency, efficiency, responsiveness, all these things, you have to ensure all these things. That becomes good governance. Now, if you add probity, this is going to ensure ethical governance. So adding moral values, moral considerations to good governance eventually become the ethical governance. This gives that ethical legitimacy to the governance. So governance without probity, what happens? It is technocratic and oppressive in nature. It means that there are rules and regulations. I'll tell you how exactly this becomes technocratic and oppressive. Rules, what there is objectivity factor, that somebody, an old tribal lady, comes to your office and she wants to enroll for a particular scheme. But the thing here is that rule says that she has to provide 10 documents in order to enroll to the schemes. But you genuinely know that she deserves that, but she don't have the documents. In good governance, what happens? You stick to the rules. There is no 10 documents, you are going to send her back that I can't do anything, you have to give that documents. But when there is a probity, this will turn into ethical governance. Now, since you have that compassion and dedication, you help her to get these 10 documents. Now, because see, ultimately government has made this particular scheme to help the people, but if you're rejecting people based on technical criteria, it eventually leads to the oppression. It become oppressive governance. But if you include probity in the governance, then you become responsive to the people. It becomes progressive governance. It is not just efficiency, it is along with that efficiency the ethical consideration, ethical legitimacy also being given to the governance. So that is the reason probity is very much important. Probity without governance become idealist. See, I am all talking about ethical concepts, all these things, but there is no rules, this efficiency, all these things, technicality, then again it becomes idealistic, it becomes ineffective. So even just governance is also ineffective, just idea probity, ethical consideration, it is also ineffective. So the combination of ethics, probity, as well as the governance, both are important. So probity it is considered as a backbone to the good governance. So probity gives moral compass. Moral compass is nothing but the direction. It shows you the right direction. It tells you, you are in ethical dilemma, there is a conflict of interest, this probity tells you what to do at that junction, what decisions you have to make. It gives that validation for your decision making. So it provides the institutional vehicle. Probity adds that, it tells you what to do and what not to do, what is right and what is wrong, and based on that you can take a decision. So it acts as a moral compass. And together, if there is a probity in governance, probity in good governance, eventually it will lead to the social justice, and there will be an accountability factor, there will be transparency, and you can find the equity also, and there is a trust factor is also going to be developed. So this is what probity ensures, right? Now let's see the philosophical basis. Let's see the support to this concept of, now we understood probity is necessary for government. So we came to the conclusion probity is necessary for the good governance. In order to convert governance into the ethical governance, probity is very much important. But there is a philosophical backing also. It is not that only modern phenomena, there is a philosophical backing also. Even the Western philosophy also supports it, Eastern philosophy, Indian philosophy also supports it. From Western philosophy, I told you that before also, the virtue ethicist, they supported this idea, ethical consider your whatever the actions you take, it has to be based on certain virtues. So they supported it. So we are going to see that. And even if you look at the Thomas Hobbes, the social contract theory, there also it talks about probity. I'll tell you that. Let's talk about the Western thought, philosophical support or basis for this concept of probity and governance. Socrates, uh, Plato, Aristotle, these are virtue ethicists. And these three virtue ethicists, they told that whatever your action, that has to be based on, every actions, every decision should be based on morals, nothing but ethics, all these things, virtues, all these things. Here they talked about knowledge. Socrates very precisely talked about knowledge. What is knowledge? Knowledge is knowing what is right and what is wrong. How do you know that what is right and what is wrong? It is nothing but ethical values, moral values. If your actions are based on these morals and ethical values, then it is good. It is not, then it is bad. It is positive, it is negative. So Socrates talk about knowledge. This knowledge is nothing but probity. So he talks about probity. And next, Plato talks about four important virtues. One is wisdom, the second is courage, temperance, this eventually, and the fourth virtue is the this eventually justice. So here, wisdom to justice, this is the path. See, ruler should have that wisdom, what is right and what is wrong, and soldier should have that courage, and the citizen should have the temperance. So it starts from wisdom and it ends in the justice. And this wisdom is nothing but probity. This justice is nothing but governance, good governance or ethical governance. So ultimately, probity leads to good governance. Even though this stand is taken by, or indirectly, this is what he implied. Plato talked about it. Probity leads to the ethical governance. Next, Aristotle also, he talked about the justice. Here also justice is nothing but ethical governance. He also told the same thing. Governance must be grounded in justice to be legitimate and ethical. Again, governance, again it talks about justice. How exactly you are going to reach there? Through the power. It talks about doctrine of mean, and this doctrine of mean, it ensures there is a probity, it ensures moral consideration, it ensures ethical obligations. So this is what all the virtue ethicists, they talk about probity as a starting point, and that probity leads to the ethical governance, that probity leads to the good governance. So there is a philosophical backing to it. And even Thomas Hobbes he talked about social contract theory. In the social contract theory, what happens, he says that everybody works for the self interest. I have certain self interest, I work for it, you have certain self interest, you work for it. This what happens, if everybody works for their self interest, society, there will be a lot of clashes. So in order to remove this clash, I am surrendering my self interest to government, you are surrendering your self interest to governance. Now it is responsibility of a government to take care of my necessities and your necessities. Fine, I have given surrendered my rights, now government is going to take care of all these things. Now what happens, if the people in government, if they become uh, immoral, if they become unhealthy, then this social contract is going to break down. See, I am not going to respect the social contract, and this is going to break down. So even to have that social contract theory, see, even if the democracy also, it is based on the social contract, there is an extension of social contract. After that, people have given changes, people have made some changes to social contract theory. Ultimately, it is like elections, I am voting for this particular politicians because I trust him, there is a trust factor. But what if that this particular person is become unethical, is become corrupt and all, this is going to impact my existence, because he has the money, has the control of my resources, he has the control of authority, everything. If he becomes corrupt, then it is going to impact all of us. So here what happens, probity ensures that the government is not going to be corrupt. So in order to ensure the social contract, probity is extremely important. And here also he says that probity is the backbone of social contract theory. So even if you look at the western philosophies, they also supported probity is extremely important for the good governance. So this is what the ultimate conclusion is. Virtue ethics, they told that probity is important for governance. Even the social contract theories, the proponents of social contract theories, they also talked about probity is very important for uh, good governance. And let's see, if you see from the Indian perspective, perspective, we talks about Ram Raj, we talked about dharma, we talked about uh, responsibilities, Raj Dharma, all Lokasangra, all these things, welfare of all these things. These things are, all these aspects are based on probity only. See, if you look at the Indian government, what are the sources? Vedas and Upanishads. Vedas and Upanishads also, they talk about what are the responsibility of a king, what are the responsibility of a people, citizens, what are my responsibility, Praja Dharma, Raja Dharma. And Dharma Shastras also, Smriti, they talks about what is right thing to do, what is the what are think what are considered as unethical or immoral in the society. They also act as a the guiding factor for the governance. And we have epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata, even the stories, their characteristics there and the events, they also act as a guiding factor. They tells you what is right and wrong. And Kautilya's Arthashastra, even though it may be considered as a political administrative work, but still a lot of ethical consideration, and how exactly king should be, what are the principles he has to follow, all these things are mentioned in the Kautilya Arthashastra and Buddhist Jain literature. All these things we can consider as a source for the governance. And all these things, they talked about ethics. And very precisely, if we dissect it, they also talk about probity, and eventually this leads to the dharma, and eventually this talk about ethical governance. So even Indian idea, the dharma, it talks about moral order. uh, what are the moral orders I have to uphold? Being a subject, being a citizen, I have to uphold certain values. And being a king, he has to uphold certain value system. Raj dharma, it is the duty of a king. what he has to, how exactly he has to rule, and he has to protect the weak and he has to ensure the welfare. These are mentioned under the Raj Dharma, and king has to uphold this value. And Bhagavad Gita talks about Loka Sangraha. It means that welfare of the society, upliftment of everybody, happiness of everybody. These are the concepts. Kautilya's Arthashastra talks about emphasis of rule of law, accountability of officials, corruption. It talks about corruptions, welfare oriented development. All these things. Ashoka's Dharma, it talks about ethical governance based on compassion, tolerance, and non-violence. See, these are considered as a sources. It talks about probity. These talks about ethical consideration. These talks about moral standards. So ultimately, Western philosophers also talks about probity. Eastern concept of administration governance also talks about probity here. So Indian thought integrates morality directly into the governance. Even the Western also integrates into the governance. So ethics is not external to politics, but it is the foundation. So ultimately, ethics, probity, this is foundation for good governance. This is the foundation for ethical governance. So this is what this particular topic is talking about. We talked about concept of public services. We talked about probity, and I think this is it for the day. I'll see you guys in the next video, and thank you so much for listening. Have a good time. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good time.